Donald Trump demanded that Ukraine give up part of its territory, give up some of its weapons, cut its army in half, all for the sake of reaching a peace agreement with Russia. The United States and Russia also secretly created a peace plan to end the Ukraine war, excluding Ukraine and Europe. It consists of 28 points, and its main architects were Trump's representative Steve Witkoff and Putin's representative Kirill Dmitriev. Additionally, the Russian envoy is publicly claiming that Moscow believes its position is finally being heard. Moreover, in this peace plan of Donald Trump, the United States administration included not only the issue of Ukraine, but also the security of all of Europe. And in Europe, there are already fears that Trump and Putin will simply divide Europe. But the most dangerous thing is what's in this peace plan of Trump and Putin. There is a clause that Ukraine must give up all the territories that the Kremlin names, must cut its army in half, abandon all military developments of recent years, and give up any missiles. In return, Ukraine will get security guarantees from the West, mainly the United States. In fact, this means capitulation in exchange for promises. Well, and there's also this in the peace plan, granting the Russian language official status in Ukraine, as well as restoring the official status of the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. In essence, Witkoff and Dmitriev have come up with a plan that basically repeats the same things that were in Istanbul in 2022. And here's an important point. The Ukrainian side has already received this plan. That's why Rustam Umerov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, went to the United States on November 16. And today, American military personnel arrived in Ukraine, who will later fly to Moscow to establish contacts for resuming negotiations. In general, we'll talk about all this in more detail in this episode. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic in detail. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and write any detailed comment under this video. Also, I ask you to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as soon as it comes in, because on YouTube it comes out a bit later. Also, if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says exactly that. Support the Alexei Pichi channel. Use any convenient format. I appreciate any support you can provide. So, representatives of the Pentagon arrived in Kyiv today to try to resume the peace negotiation process to end Russia's war against Ukraine, as well as to deepen cooperation in the field of military technologies. This was reported today by the publication Politico. In particular, United States Army Secretary Dan Driscoll and United States Army Chief of Staff Randy George became the highest-ranking Pentagon officials from the Donald Trump administration to have visited Ukraine so far. As it turned out, they were in Kyiv, by the way, a little earlier than it was announced. But starting from Wednesday, November 19th, they are scheduled to meet with Ukrainian military leaders, lawmakers, and President Volodymyr Zelensky, who, by the way, was visiting Turkey today. We will talk about this with you today as well. Sources say American military officials are visiting to urge Ukrainian leaders to enter peace talks with Russia. The United States and Ukraine are also working on a major agreement for the exchange of drone and autonomous munitions technologies. This trip is partly intended to support these efforts as well, but the main focus is still on the negotiations. But most notably, after the visit to Kyiv, later Driscoll plans to meet with Russian officials, probably in Moscow. And here's what's notable. The visit of the American delegation is taking place at a time when Russia has intensified its deadly missile and drone attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Western allies seek new ways to continue. And Russia has intensified its attacks to psychologically increase the pressure on Kyiv from Washington. An unexpected detail emerges here, according to the Wall Street Journal. The White House's decision to reach out to Driscoll and high-ranking military officers is partly based on the belief that Moscow may be more open to negotiations mediated by the military, as well as disappointment that numerous previous attempts have yielded no results. Driscoll is going to Ukraine to assess the situation on the ground. He will participate in meetings in Ukraine and report his findings to the White House. Or here's another thing that kept bothering me. The Pentagon decided to send Driscoll, who is still a civilian leader of the army, whose work is mainly focused on training and equipping soldiers. But, as they say, you shouldn't be surprised by such a choice. Here's what Politico writes, quote, "The visit aims to involve Ukrainian leaders in the ongoing peace process with Russia, even though Moscow has rejected all previous United States and Ukrainian efforts to stop the conflict." Well, basically, Trump is sending his friend Vitkov, and JD Vance says, why not find a place for my friend Driscoll as well? And so, the same publication, Politico, found out that the White House is expressing optimistic hopes to agree on a framework for ending the war in Ukraine by the end of this month. According to the publication, however, Ukraine may be presented with a potential plan agreed upon with Russia as a fait accompli. It is claimed that the White House is about to announce a new important peace agreement with Russia, which, according to officials, will finally put an end to Russia's war against Ukraine. But of course, Ukraine and Europe will not like this plan at all. And now it becomes clear what exactly Russia's goal is in carrying out sabotage and launching all these drones over Europe. It's all simply to intimidate Europe and to make Europe more willing to agree to the peace plan developed by representatives of Trump and Putin. As it turned out, Trump's special representative Steve Vitkov spent 3 days negotiating with the Russian negotiator Kirill Dmitriev in Miami at the end of last month. And now there's a 28-point peace plan on the table. And here's what it says today. The new peace plan apparently does not take into account the opinions of Ukraine and America's allies in Europe. We still don't know the details of decisions on the toughest issues like Russia's seizure of Ukrainian territories, the abduction of thousands of Ukrainian children, or future security guarantees for Ukraine. However, the mood in the White House is optimistic, and it seems the plan will be presented to Zelensky as a fait accompli, meaning as something imposed from above. The Trump administration believes that Zelensky, who is under pressure both on the battlefield and on the domestic front, in particular because of the corruption scandal Minishgate, he will be forced to accept what is being offered to him. That is, Vitkov and Dmitriev wrote their own peace plan, which Ukraine and Europe definitely won't like, and in this episode we'll briefly discuss it. But all the nuances and details of this peace plan with Donald Trump we'll discuss in a separate episode. There's a lot to talk about there. And as Axios reports, the Trump administration secretly held consultations with Russia to develop a new plan to end the war in Ukraine. And the most dangerous thing here is that it was developed by Vitkov and Dmitriev. And as Axios writes, the United States plan of 28 points was inspired by President Trump's successful efforts to reach an agreement on the Gaza Strip. A high-ranking Russian official told Axios that he is optimistic about the plan. Axios sources reported that the points of the plan can be divided into 4 main categories: peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, security in Europe, and the future relations of the United States with Russia and Ukraine. And the paradox is that in Trump's plan, Putin is demanding that Ukraine make greater sacrifices for the sake of all of Europe. According to the plan, Ukraine must give up territories, abandon certain types of weapons, primarily missiles and drones, and reduce its own army by at least half. In return, the United States gives Ukraine verbal security guarantees, and Russia also verbally promises all of Europe that it definitely won't attack and will stop all sabotage. In other words, basically everything that Russia has been doing in Europe in recent weeks. This was meant to make Europe afraid and say, Ukraine, please just give up your territories so that Russia will stop terrorizing us. And it seems that part of the Trump administration has finally teamed up with the Russians. Steve Vitkov was set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Turkey today, Wednesday, but postponed his trip. He previously discussed this plan with Zelensky's national security advisor, Rustem Umerov, at a Miami meeting on November 16. And now Putin's envoy, Dmitriev, has stated that these efforts are completely unrelated to the United Kingdom. And France-led attempt to develop a European peace plan for Ukraine, which, by the way, is what Zelensky was bringing to Turkey today. While the Europeans were figuring out how to bring peace to Europe, Trump and Putin had already agreed on how to take Russia's interests into account. But that's not all, and that's why I'll tell you more about this entire peace plan in the next episode. So friends, I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to give a like. That's it for now, take care, goodbye all.